As the principal of number 1 middle school and his colleagues monitored Lufan from the surveillance room, a figure resembling a detective approached. This individual sported a cap and spectacles, with one hand casually tucked into a pocket and the other grasping a briefcase. The principal and Director Bai rose to their feet, utterly astonished by Lufan's ability to defeat the formidable black man wolves with a single strike. While the group remained distracted by this feat, the mysterious man entered the room, his voice immediately drawing everyone's attention. Shanhai's head snapped toward the newcomer, his posture instantly becoming more guarded. The man strode into the room, adjusting his cap as he introduced himself as Qian Xiong, a special emissary from Longdo. He explained his purpose, to escort someone back to Longdo for questioning. Removing his cap and holding it in his hands, he scanned the room, his gaze settling on Shanhai as he inquired about the whereabouts of Dragon Master Lu Fan. A statistics window materialized, revealing Chen Xiong's combat class and impressive level of 57. Concurrently, within the nightmare trial, Lu Fan wielded a dagger to slice through thick vines obstructing his path. With the blade in one hand, he used the other to access the system map. His face lit up with satisfaction upon locating his objective. A system notification appeared, confirming his arrival at the treasure map's designated location. This was swiftly followed by another alert, informing him of the successful synthesis of a high-level treasure map. As Lu Fan studied the system map, a wave of excitement washed over him. Prior to entering the trial realm, he had successfully synthesized a high-level treasure map, which revealed the treasure's location on the Celestial Tower's first floor. Filled with determination, Lu Fan began slicing through the vines that blocked his path. Upon clearing the obstruction, his eyes fell upon a book. Without hesitation, he reached out and grasped it, triggering an immediate system notification that informed him of his acquisition, a skill book named Accelerated Growth. This book radiated a brilliant light, its cover adorned with several sparkling gems. The statistics window classified it as an item of rare quality. The skill book offered its user the opportunity to learn a passive skill called Accelerated Growth, which promised to double the experience gained by pets. Eager to harness its power, Lu Fan opened the book without delay. As he did so, a potent energy emanated from its pages, enveloping his body in a luminous aura. Through this process, Lu Fan successfully acquired the Accelerated Growth ability. Holding the book in his hands, Lu Fan contemplated how perfectly suited this skill was for small nocturnal creatures. As the powerful energy continued to swirl around his form, he clenched his fist tightly, turning to examine it with a smile playing on his lips. His thoughts drifted to Xiaoyi and her slow leveling progress when they had left Morning Village. Now, armed with this new passive ability, he knew her advancement would occur at a much more rapid pace. Meanwhile, in a separate room, Director Bai, Shanhai, and Qian Xiong were intently observing Lu Fan's actions through a monitor screen. Qian Xiong turned to address Director Bai, suggesting that since Lu Fan was a student from their institution, they should immediately interrupt his trial and request his return. Director Bai, his expression grave, approached Qian Xiong and explained that despite any pressing matters at hand, it would be more appropriate to allow the students to complete their exams before intervening. Speaking in his capacity as the director of the Third Institute, he assured Qian Xiong that he was prepared to assume full responsibility for Lu Fan's actions. Qian Xiong pivoted to face forward, adjusting his glasses as he spoke. He clarified that while Director Bai could indeed take responsibility for Lu Fan, he could not bear the punishment in his stead. Confusion evident on his face, Director Bai inquired about the nature of this punishment Qian Xiong was alluding to. At that precise moment, Shanhai stepped forward, closing the distance to Qian Xiong. He grasped Qian Xiong's arm firmly, turning him around to face him directly. With one hand casually tucked into his pocket, Shanhai fixed Qian Xiong with an intense, unwavering gaze. Speaking to him as one would address an old classmate, Shanhai implored Qian Xiong to listen carefully to what he had to say. The director of number 1 middle school reached out his hand toward them and inquired about the Dragon Master's actions. Qian Xiong turned his body backwards, using a little force to make Shanhai release his arm, leaving Shanhai somewhat confused. With an angry look, Qian Xiong asked Shanhai not to distract him while he was performing his task, and requested that he not try to approach him. Then, he began to stare at Shanhai furiously, pointing at him. Despite not knowing why Shanhai was defending the Dragon Tamer, Qian Xiong warned him that if he got involved, both the Jin family and the high-ranking members of the Dragon clan would not be pleased. Shanhai simply looked at Qian Xiong with a serious gaze and remained silent. After his warning, Qian Xiong pushed Shanhai aside and asked if he understood. He then told Director Bai to bring Luan while he was distracted. Shanhai called him an old friend. Hearing this, Qian Xiong turned his head back. Shanhai took out a cigarette, put it in his mouth, lit a lighter, and as he brought it close to light the cigarette, he explained to Qian Xiong that the relationship between the high-ranking officials of Longdo and the Jin family affected both the Dragon Kingdom and the Taki Kingdom, making it quite complicated. He revealed that once Lufan's secret was out, both the high-ranking officials and the Jin family would become insignificant. He lit the cigarette and, holding it in his hand with a serious look, began to stare at Qian Xiong. He then declared that today, no one could take Luan away. Upon hearing this, Qian Xiong couldn't help but get angry. He pointed at Shanhai and told him to stop talking nonsense, saying he didn't believe Luan had any secret. He also added that disobeying the orders of the special envoy was an act of insubordination. While they were conversing, the directors remained silent without interrupting. Tang turned around, but at that moment, Shanhai approached him and grabbed his wrists. They both stared into each other's eyes, creating a tense atmosphere. Holding a cigarette with one hand, Shanhai stared at Qian Xiong and told him that even if he was making a mistake, he was willing to accept it. Qian Xiong, with an aggressive look, revealed that his actions would be reported to the senior management of Longdo. Shanhai was a level 57 knight, and Qian Xiong was a level 57 swordsman. Director Bai approached them and asked them to calm down, emphasizing that they should not disrupt the important trial exam. Qian Xiong made Shanhai let go of his hand, then slightly turned his head towards him and asked why he was going so far for Luan. Shanhai took the cigarette out of his mouth, turned toward the screen, and while exhaling, asked Qian Xiong if he wasn't curious about Lufan's secret that had angered the high-ranking officials of Longdo and the Jin family. Qian Xiong raised his head and, while looking at the screen, was shocked to see that Luan had chosen the nightmare level. In the nightmare trial, Luan continued cutting through the vines until he reached a door. Initially, he only wanted to test how far he could go alone. But now, with the passive ability he had gained, he decided to continue exploring further. With his hand on his hip, observing the door with a smile, his status window appeared. Luan was a level 15 Dragon Master with a stored value of 280,000. His stats were as follows: Strength 184 points, Agility 103 points, Spirit 47 points, and Stamina 158 points. He had the art of taming dragons, which allowed him to tame dragons. His abilities included Dragon Claw, which allowed him to transform his arm into a dragon claw with power dependent on his current pet dragon, and Dragon's Inspiration, which increased all attributes and attack power by 30% for himself and his dragon pet. The Accelerate Growth skill increased the experience gained by his pet by 100%. Extending his hand to one side, he conjured a fireball and decided it was better to summon Xiaoyi so that she could gain early experience. In the surveillance room, Qianxiang turned to his colleagues, his expression a mix of surprise and curiosity. What makes Lu Fan so special that he dares to challenge the nightmare trial, he asked. The director of number 1 middle school quickly drew his attention to the screen, pointing emphatically. Didn't you see? He defeated those monsters with just one blow. At that moment, a thunderous roar echoed through the room. It was Xiaoyi. Kang Shang and the director whipped their heads back toward the screen, their eyes widening in shock. Lu Fan stood with his hand extended skyward, his body wreathed in powerful flames. Xiaoyi, come forth, he commanded. As the majestic creature appeared, everyone in the room gasped, their minds racing. Is that a dragon? They whispered among themselves. Xiaoyi approached the imposing stone door, her eyes fixed intently upon it, as she readied her claw for a devastating strike. Shanhai, observing the scene, mused aloud. Even though I've seen the dragoness Xiaoyi before, witnessing her again still leaves me in awe. With a single forceful blow, Xiaoyi's claw shattered the stone door into countless pieces. As Kang Shang and the others watched open-mouthed, Shanhai turned to face them. Removing the cigarette from his lips, he reached towards the screen where Xiaoyi's image loomed large. With a knowing smile, he revealed, "This, my friends, is Lu Fan's secret. He is the only dragon master in all of history to have tamed a dragon." Director Bai, upon realizing that Lu Fan had indeed managed to tame a dragon, found himself utterly speechless. Meanwhile, Lu Fan had reached the second floor of the nightmare trial. As Xiaoyi unleashed her fiery breath, incinerating the monstrous plants in their path, Lu Fan deftly wielded his dagger, slicing through vines with precision. A system notification appeared, informing everyone that Lu Fan had successfully unlocked Level 2. The principal of number 1 middle school, watching in amazement as Lu Fan and his dragon decimated the monsters, exclaimed, This is the true strength of dragons. Without a third-class change, one couldn't hope to face such a beast." Another teacher approached, his eyes fixed on the screen as Lu Fan continued to dispatch monsters with singular blows. "You know," he said, his voice tinged with both awe and trepidation, "after he levels up, Lu Fan might possess enough power to bring down an entire country." The weight of the statement hung heavy in the air, as those present contemplated the implications of such unprecedented power in the hands of a single individual. Lu Fan secured first place with an impressive 58,500 points, far surpassing Hongwu's 27,550 points in second place on the Fear Trial's second floor. Qin Kui and Xiaoman held third and fourth places, both on the Fear Trial's third floor with 12,570 points. Thanks to Xiaoyi's relentless monster massacring, Lu Fan swiftly reached level 13 of the Nightmare Trial. Director Bai, keenly observing Lu Fan, revealed that not only was his dragon powerful, but Lu Fan had also significantly improved his own abilities. He disclosed to everyone that Lu Fan's attributes far exceeded 100, asserting that even without summoning the dragon, he could maintain first place in Zhanghai City. Shanhai removed the cigarette from his mouth and, holding it in his hand, turned to Qianxiang with a smile. "Do you still want to take Lu Fan before the higher-ups?" he asked. Kang Shang met his gaze and replied, "Today I've finally broadened my vision and understood why you dared to offend the Jin family." Shanhai turned his back, lowered his head, closed his eyes, and as he put the cigarette back in his mouth, decided to send a fragment of Lu Fan's great exam video to M. This would eliminate the need for intermediaries between Lu Fan and the Jin family. He instructed Qianxiang to return where he came from. Upon hearing the name Master, Qianxiang was shocked and asked if Shanhai was really going to send it to him. Shanhai, cigarette in mouth, turned his head and smiled, revealing he would send the video to the Marquis of the North, Tu Jing. Simultaneously, Lufan and Xiaoyi reached level 20 of the nightmare trial. Before them stretched a dark corridor, and slowly a woman holding a magic ball approached. Her hand extended to one side, summoning the orb in her palm. Behind her stood 3 knights. The statistics window revealed her name as Dark Sacrifice, level 15, with abilities including Black Curse, Merging into Darkness, and Darkness Control. As Lufan petted Xiaoyi, he smiled, knowing her growth acceleration effect would soon trigger a level up. He extended his hand toward the woman and ordered Xiaoyi to use the lava flame ability. Xiaoyi obeyed, fixing the woman with a killer look as she opened her mouth to conjure a fireball. A system window appeared, informing Lufan that the ability had recharged. Xiaoyi unleashed a powerful flame toward the woman and the Dark Knights, continuously emitting flames that caused damage while healing herself. Within seconds, Xiaoyi's flames consumed the woman and knights, reducing them to bones and completing level 20 of the nightmare trial. As Xiaoyi closed her mouth, Lufan covered his face with his hand, unable to suppress a smile. 2 system windows appeared, indicating that both Lufan and Xiaoyi had leveled up. Seeing this, he couldn't help but praise her effusively. Lufan now topped the leaderboard with 90,000 points. Hongwu held second place with 31,050 points at level 34 of the Fear Trial, while Qin Kui and Xiaoman shared third place with 16,900 points, also in the Fear Trial. Lufan turned to Xiaoyi with a smile, inviting her to join him in clearing the Celestial Tower together. 60 minutes later, atop a peak situated on the 50th floor of the Fear Trial, a massive detonation took place. This blast had been triggered by Hongwu, who was exhausted and wearing tattered garments from his relentless battle against creatures for many hours. Upon vanquishing the final beast, a system notification materialized, informing him of his completion of the 50th level. As he regained his breath, he wiped his chin and reflected on the misfortune of this year, noting the exceptional difficulty of the exam. The monsters Hongwu had faced typically appeared around the 70th level. He assumed a combative posture and, with a resolute grin, vowed to secure the top position in the Southern Province's grand examination. Following this thought, he tightly balled his fists, gazed skyward, and began to yell. He inquired if the director was observing him and demanded that the officials from the top 10 educational institutions be contacted to prepare for his enrollment. Concurrently, in the monitoring chamber, where Director Bai and the principal of the premier school were supervising the students, they heard Hongwu but disregarded him, being engrossed in observing Lufan's dragon. As Director Bai stroked his beard and watched Lufan on the screen, he elucidated that the 50th floor of the Celestial Tower was the most challenging, as all previous years' top-ranked students had struggled to overcome this level. The principal of the number 1 middle school folded his arms, turned towards the television, and clarified that this level was crucial, because even if Lufan cleared it, his subsequent ascent in the Celestial Tower would be considerably slower. Simultaneously, Lufan arrived at the 50th level of the Nightmare Trial, which manifested as a snow-covered mountain. As he and Xiaoyi traversed the area, a system notification appeared, alerting him that Xiaoyi had acquired a new skill called Transformation. After observing the system notification, he swiftly comprehended that this was the fresh capability Xiaoyi had acquired upon advancing a level. Without delay, Lufan interacted with the system notification, causing Xiaoyi's skill information window to materialize. She possessed 4 metamorphoses, her initial form being the Colossal Dragon. The primary transformation was dubbed Young Dragon, wherein all her characteristics and energy utilization were halved. The subsequent transformation was named Dragon Woman, which she could solely activate by establishing a pact with a dragon tamer. The third metamorphosis was termed Destruction Dragon, reducing Xiaoyi's might by 50% while doubling her spirit, bestowing upon her new abilities labeled Burn Everything and Lava Explosion. The final transformation was christened World Destroyer, diminishing her endurance by half while doubling her strength, granting her fresh abilities called Tear the Earth Apart and Roar of Terror. As Luan examined Xiaoyi's status display, the earth began to tremble. Witnessing this, he was mildly astonished and started to ponder what was transpiring. Xiaoyi rotated her head sideways and discerned that something ominous was imminent. At that instant, the nearby stones began to levitate and coalesce, until moments later, a behemoth composed of rocks manifested. Despite Xiaoyi's enormous size, this creature towered over her. This entity was dubbed the Purple-Eyed Mountain Giant and was classified as Level 20. It boasted several distinctive abilities. The initial skill was named the Fist of the Mountains, enabling it to wield its rocky appendage to sweep all targets before it, inflicting substantial harm. The second capability was called Mountain Earthquake, allowing the monster to accumulate momentum and execute a massive leap, repeatedly striking the ground, causing extensive damage accompanied by 5 tremors. The third and ultimate ability was termed Purple Stone, permitting the monster to generate a mystical shield that halved incoming damage, rendering it impervious to armor-piercing effects. Upon beholding the Nightmare Trial monster, Director Bai was astounded and began to speculate how Luan would confront it. The principal of the premier middle school merely exhaled and reiterated that level 50 would prove decisive, as it would decelerate Luan's ascent through the celestial tower. He shifted his gaze toward the scoreboard and was astonished to find Luan occupying the top position with 3.2 million points. With this tally, the foremost rank in Zhanghai City was already guaranteed for Luan. The director recognized that it was highly probable that he would also emerge as the frontrunner in the entire southern province. He was perplexed as to how a student of such immense potential wasn't from the first middle school. Concurrently, on the 50th level of the Nightmare Trial, the behemoth began to fix its gaze upon Lu Fan and bellow. As he was inspecting the monster's status display, it activated the ability called Mountain Fist, which allowed it to swing its rocky limb to sweep all targets before it, inflicting massive damage. Luan contemplated the damage mitigation effect. Now that he had attained the midpoint of the celestial tower in the trial, the challenge had intensified compared to earlier stages. The monster swiftly began to propel its fist towards Luan with aggressive intent. Gradually, the creature's fist drew nearer. Luan merely grinned. Just as the behemoth's fist was about to make contact, Xiaoyi materialized and countered the monster's punch with her own, thwarting the assault. Luan casually placed his hands in his pockets, and recognizing the situation's gravity, summoned Xiaoyi's attention, instructing her to metamorphose into the World Destroyer form. Upon receiving the command, she emitted a roar, signaling her comprehension. At that instant, a crimson aura enveloped her body as she expanded enormously. Gaining momentum, she took flight, forcefully propelling the monster backward. Observing this, Director Bai was astounded and began to speculate about Luan's strategy. Gradually, Xiaoyi underwent her transformation. Formidable obsidian armor materialized around her talons, accompanied by a rosy flame. Subsequently, her wings transmuted into infernos. Moments later, her appearance altered completely, her form now sheathed in ebony armor. As she soared and neared the monster, she let out a roar. A system notification appeared, informing Luan of the completed transformation. She had now assumed the form of the obsidian dragon, dubbed World Destroyer. Her might had doubled from 1,456 points to 2,912, while her spirit had diminished from 1,424 points to 712. Her agility and stamina remained constant. Post-transformation, she unlocked two novel abilities, Earthbreak and Roar of the Apocalypse. Upon witnessing Lufan's dragon's ability to metamorphose and become even more formidable in combat, Director Bai, Shanhai, and the principal of the premier middle school were dumbfounded. Shanhai, observing Lufan with an astonished expression, began to perspire and confessed that such transformations gave him goosebumps. While Lufan was momentarily distracted, the behemoth attempted a sneak attack from behind using its fist. Fortunately, he detected the assault and, with a sudden burst of momentum, leapt, evading the strike. This caused the monster's fist to collide with the ground, shattering into fragments. Seeing that Lufan had dodged the attack, the monster fixed him with a murderous glare. Lufan activated a skill called Dragon's Inspiration, which invigorated both himself and his dragon companion, augmenting all attributes and attack power by 30%. With his eye emanating an intense flame, he turned toward the monster and, smiling, summoned Xiaoyi. Thanks to Lufan employing the Dragon's Inspiration ability, her strength surged from 2,912 points to 3,785. Her spirit increased from 712 points to 925. Her agility rose from 1,104 points to 1,435, and her stamina expanded from 1,153 points to 1,953. As Lufan's hand emitted a potent flame, he extended it toward the monster and commanded Xiaoyi to execute the giant jaw attack, which allowed her to amplify her speed and bite the target, inflicting persistent bleeding damage. In an instant, Xiaoyi materialized and took a powerful bite out of the rock monster, shattering its body. Witnessing this, the principal of the first middle school was astounded and began to question if a level 20 boss had truly been vanquished with a single bite. Director Bai turned his attention to the television and, with a grave expression, deduced that if Lufan could breach the defense of the purple-eyed mountain giant, Xiaoye's attack power must surely exceed 2,000 points. While Lufan was airborne, the monster reassembled its form and attempted to seize him. Luckily, he reacted swiftly, maneuvering his body sideways to evade the grasp. Still suspended in midair, he pivoted towards the monster and, while intently gazing at it, harnessed Xiaoyi's power. This caused obsidian armor to materialize around his hand, transmuting it into a talon. He unleashed a formidable assault against the monster, obliterating it and generating a massive explosion in the process. The ability Lufan had employed was termed Dragon's Claw, which metamorphosed the user's arm into a dragon's talon, its potency contingent upon the black dragon. Witnessing Lufan's capability, Qianxiang was awestruck. Shanhai rotated his head towards him and inquired if he now comprehended why he had prevented him from recruiting Lufan. While Lufan was airborne, another behemoth materialized and swiftly approached him. He merely turned his gaze towards it, extended his arm sideways, and reactivated the dragon claw. As Xiaoyi was engaged in combat with a different monster, she noticed Lufan's predicament. She elevated her head and, while observing the monster, emitted a mighty roar, propelling its body backward. She had employed the Roar of the Apocalypse, an ability that allowed her to produce a deafening bellow toward the target, inflicting substantial damage to all entities within range, and applying a vulnerability effect. Lufan slightly rotated his head toward the monster, and, with a resolute grin, determined it was time to deliver the finishing strike. At that moment, Xiaoyi appeared behind him and began glaring at the monster with a murderous expression, surprising Lufan. Lufan activated the ability called Earthbreak, which enabled Xiaoyi to forcefully strike the ground, causing extensive damage to all targets affected by the shockwave and creating abyssal fissures in the process. Enemy targets risked falling into these newly formed abyssal cracks. She spread her wings wide and violently struck the ground, shattering it and generating an abyssal fissure. The nightmare trial boss plummeted into the crack, from which it could not escape. Having vanquished the boss, her level increased to 12, and Lufan's level rose to 17. With both having advanced, Lufan reflected that selecting the nightmare trial had been the correct decision. He turned his head to one side and, smiling, considered that not only did he face no obstacles in terms of difficulty, but each time he progressed to the next level, he gained experience and leveled up significantly. Having successfully cleared level 50, a portal materialized. Without hesitation, Lufan and Xiaoyi began moving towards the portal. Simultaneously, in the surveillance room, Shanghai extinguished his cigarette, then slightly turned his head toward the principal of the first middle school and informed him that the supposedly decisive level 50 had posed no challenge for Lufan. He simply folded his arms, closed his eyes, and responded that Lufan's formidable dragon was simply beyond his comprehension. Upon hearing this, Director Bai turned his attention to Kang Sham, given his extensive knowledge about dragons. The director inquired if he could discern how powerful Lufan's dragon had become after its transformation. Qian Xiong placed his hand under his chin and explained that he had observed some significant individuals battling in the dragon realm. Comparing the might of Lufan's dragon with those dragons, he disclosed to everyone that Lufan's dragon possessed a strength of at least 2,500 points. Upon hearing this, the principal of the first middle school was astounded. He began to stare at Qian Xiong and informed the others that 2,500 points seemed excessive. He questioned whether their level and attributes were not worth mentioning. Principal Bai simply listened silently, then raised his head and, while observing Lufan through the screen, thought he was correct. He feared that Lufan's attributes would continue to increase rather than decrease. While the principal of the first middle school stood with crossed arms, he closed his eyes and informed the others that since Lufan had reached level 50, the pattern of X+1 would also become increasingly apparent. Upon hearing this, Shanghai turned his head back and inquired about the nature of the X+1 pattern. As Director Bai watched the television, he informed the others that there was no doubt, as the X+1 pattern had been devised by scholars as an initial test for the Celestial Tower. He elucidated to everyone that after students pass floor 50, every time they cleared X levels with numerous normal monsters, they would encounter a higher level boss. This made the test more akin to a real dungeon, where one was constantly at risk of losing their life. With a grave expression, he revealed to everyone that in the nightmare trial of the Celestial Tower, this differed because all the monsters were to be replaced by nightmare difficulty bosses. And that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed this content and want to see what happens next, be sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us create more exciting content for you. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or predictions for the next part. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.